What is up, y'all? It is Ralph Rain, and we are back again. This is episode 2 of Truly Independent with Ralph Rain. I am your host here. The goal of this show, of this series, is to get you creatively inspired and, and empowered, able to do whatever it is that you do in your realms. You could take a lot of the philosophy I do and apply it to other stuff, other creative worlds. Essentially, one of my most inspirational quotes is trading up from a paperclip, and you can get to wherever you want from wherever you are right now. And so with music, I'm a hip-hop artist, but I also do my own photo and video work. I produce, I rap, I sing, I use a bunch of different gear, and so that's what this series is about. It's about all the stuff that I use, how I do it, and why I do it. So today we're getting into Lightroom. It's my favorite photo editing software, just for straight up photo editing, not Photoshop, not doing anything extra crazy. Taking what you've taken on a really nice camera or even on your phone. I've been really surprised lately at the quality of images I can get, the end result when I take it on my phone, my iPhone, X, 10, basic 10, and then edit it in Lightroom, and I'm getting some really amazing results. Just dialing in a little bit more. So without further ado, thank you for being here. Like, comment, subscribe, and we're gonna get into the tutorial here. This is gonna be a Lightroom tutorial. So let me open up Lightroom here. This is a picture of my lovely girlfriend Mackenzie, and I'm not sure how well you can see my little mouse over here, but essentially this is Lightroom. And if you come over here, if you click on the top left where the big cursor is, by the red, yellow, and green dots, it'll bring you to the main menu. And then this is where on the top left you come and add photos. This window is hidden. Adobe, as a software manufacturer, as a service, as a collective, whatever it is they're doing, amazing things in the Creative Cloud. They're really good at making things minimal and hidden, so you have to click on things from the pop out. Bam, photos. It'll take you to your albums. This is kind of where you organize stuff and learn stuff. This is where the beginning of the process begins. I already have a photo loaded, so I'm gonna close that. And then if we come over here to the right, we're gonna notice we have another little wall of options here, of windows, of tabs that pop out. The first one is the editing tab. The next is going to be for cropping. The next is the healing brush, and then this will allow you to smooth out certain areas and replace the image of areas. So say there's a black dot on the background here, I can select that, and then I literally will find an area in the photo that I feel is similar enough to what I want to replace, that error, and then literally swap that out just that easily. So if you have random things in your images, it could be all types of stuff that you can get out and replace with a portion of a photo that you already have. It's kind of like liposuction or something. You take a little bit of fat out of here, put some in there, keep it rocking. And then you have the gradient tool, which I don't really mess with that too much, but it's essentially for adding effects in a gradient type fashion, which means in a gradual way across some kind of space and not time, because we are working in a static images. This is not Premiere Pro or After Effects. So as I said, yep, here we are. This is the first little window. And the first thing I usually do is mess with the exposure a little bit. And I shoot photos personally. I think it's a good idea to shoot photos a tiny bit, not underexposed, but you don't want the zebra to be showing up if you have a fancier Sony camera and you have those lines that are showing you that your photo is overexposed. Pay attention to those lines. You can always add brightness. You'll see I can get way brighter in here, but I don't want to get that bright. I'm going to turn my screen up to maximum brightness so I'm really seeing where things are at, and I'm going to take it to a workable zone. I don't want to get to that place where I get the final exposure yet, and I'll explain that in a second. And then I'll increase my contrast a bit. What this does is make the darks a little bit darker and the bright areas a little bit brighter, but it gives some depth. I really like adding contrast. I think black is an important color in photos, and having some more depth, you can get that with contrast. You don't want to add too much. So I would say that editing these, exposure is kind of like the overall volume, and contrast, highlights, all these other options are kind of like the mix if we're music makers here. So what you want to do is get your relationships good with the contrast, with the highlights, with the shadows, with the whites, with the blacks, the colors. You want to make sure your white balance is proper before you mess around with the exposure, because as you mess around with the contrast, the highlights, the shadows, all that stuff, your relationship's going to change a little bit, and at the end you may not need to brighten up the photo so much. And what I mean by this is, say I brighten it up a whole bunch and then I come down to highlights or whatever, and then I'm trying to fight this, instead of doing the right thing, which would have been to get things in a workable relationship first and then get to that brightness. But we'll explain that a little bit more. So the next is highlights. And what that does is kind of like your high frequencies in music. It takes the areas where you're getting the most amount of light information. The highest frequencies are brightness, and that's going to be shown in a lot of the whites. You can see if I go down, it doesn't get all the way black, but you have less light, less of the highlights, less of the areas where it's pretty much just white or above white that's hitting that area. So in a photo like this, there's a good amount of white already. I'll usually bring that down a little bit. Now we're off to shadows. You can see it instantly, right? It's kind of self-explanatory. Shadows controls how deep and how dark your shadows are within a photo. This can be very powerful for the feel and the vibe of a picture. You can see now, if I throw a lot more shadow on Mackenzie, her face pops out more, and the attention is more in the front of her face. And if I take it off less, you start to see more of her face in general, and the top of her hair and all that. Now, I'm going to double click to go back to where it was initially as shot. That's what I like to do. I like to go all the way up sometimes to see what the effect is even doing. And then I'll come all the way down to see what it does when you subtract it. And then I'll double click to get back where I was and decide, okay, do I ever want to tweak this at all? And for me, I kind of like the slightly more dramatic look on the left side of her face. So I'm going to bring the shadows down a little bit. Now here we have whites. Whites is kind of like highlights, but sometimes your highlights might be another color. So in this instance, the brightest part of our picture, for the most part, is the whites. So that is a highlight thing, and they're pretty much the same. But if we're doing a picture that was just in color, that was in pink and purple, and that was like shooting beams of really light color, then you might wanna not that you might want to increase it, but you might be noticing that you increase your highlights. It's not necessarily increasing the whites, and vice versa. So for this, as you can see in this area where we have the golden petal on the painting behind her, there's kind of a brightness there. There's like a reflection there that I don't really like. I just did the wrong slider. So what I'm gonna do is turn the whites down a tiny bit to get rid of some of that, and then to add some more to the depth. There's already some good whites in the area here. It's a darker photo. You can't polish a turd. I'm not saying this picture's a turd, but also what that means is that, if a donut goes in on your plate as a donut, it's not really much you could do to make it a piece of steak. So if you're not working with a really bright picture, if you're not working with a picture that has a lot of dynamic range and all that stuff, then it's not going to look good when you make it bright. So if you're working with photos that have some natural darkness in it and whatnot, you might just want to work with that a little bit. So I'm going to bring the blacks down a little bit. This one I've been messing with a little bit more lately. This is the temperature knob, or slider rather. And what this is really good for is finding the white balance in your pictures. So as shot, you can see it looks pretty good. And what white balance is, for people who don't know, is a setting that's very useful when it comes to color. You see how there's a white balance comes before color mixer, and that's key because you want to make sure that white is actually white as it is in the world where you took the photo. So what that means is, say this background, this door in the background here, that's naturally about the whitest thing in the room. And I know in real life that it's actually kind of tan, so it's okay if it's a little warmer. But you can see, if I just take the slider a little bit and it goes to the left towards the blue, it starts to become actually more white. And then if you keep going, it becomes blue. So it can be kind of be a gamble, and to some people it's to taste. It's not a rule thing. Sometimes you want it to be the temperature to be higher or lower for the white balance. So I think I'm about good right there. Argue with me if you want, comment, tell me that I'm wrong. I love to talk to you about the fact that there are no laws, that there is no science when it comes to art. There's science, but science is always wrong too. Science is developing, new opinions are formed, money goes here, money goes there. Now the school of thought is different. So this is all not factual. This is all just practices that I do. Tint is similar to white balance. However, it's just a full color spectrum all the way from green to purple. It's another useful tool for white balance. It's also a cool creative tool if you just want to add some color and a tint, overall tint in your photo. Or if you took a photo and it's tinted, if you have purple, I feel like the magenta thing happens where there will be color fringing, or I forget what the proper term is, but for whatever reason, maybe your picture profile was off or on a weird setting, and the picture came out slightly more purple or blue or whatever it is. So then you can mess with that and get it back to where you want. Then we have Vibrance. Now this is kind of like saturation. It's gonna add more light to our colors, and then saturation is gonna add more color to our colors. So I would do that a little bit. You can see it doesn't take much before you can kind of see that you're synthetically adding too much, and I like to be more on the minimal side myself. So now we're gonna do a cool thing with the color mixer. And I really like using this tool. It's super cool. It's like super intuitive, and what you can do is just go with the color mixer, see my cursor, find a color, and then you can drag on that color to shift all the things in this photo that are the same or similar colors. So you can just change the color with a slider of things like that. So if you have someone's eyeballs who are blue and you want to make them more blue, you could also change the setting from it being let's see, yeah, so you can change that from being a thing that controls hue to then something that controls the saturation. So then you can come here and just drag on that red and saturate that a little bit. So it really gives you a lot of control on how you want to work with things. So you come over here and say, okay, you can pretty easily brighten up and intensify the colors that you're working with, and just bounce around. You can just literally just go and find those colors. You want to make sure you're getting on just the color itself, and then you also notice that if you find a color that's similar to the skin color, the complexion of the person you've taken a photo of or a video of or whatever, and you're sliding a color around and it's changing the face of that person, you may need to add a mask to their face or to the object so that you affect only the area that you want, so that you're not sliding us, because people are indeed, newsflash, people are indeed not black and white. So we have shades of color, and some people have more red, more orange, yellow hints in their color, more brown, and gets all types of colors that you'll discover when you're editing photos. So yeah, then a cool thing, like I said, you can come here, find this color too. Want to make that pop a little bit more. This is the luminance. This is gonna change the light that's in that specific color. So once you pick a color with the wheel, you can also come over here and with the faders over here, and then control dial in them. So if you want to see exactly where you're at and not do the fader thing, sometimes I like that, so you can do a little more scientific approach and get exactly where you want. And now we have a cool zone. Just like with music, mixing is a process that involves some science and some you just bettering what you're doing. A lot of it is just helping out what you have already. Sometimes it's not really that creative, but mixing in here is it's the same thing, so you can be doing all this stuff, the color correction, the highlights, blah blah blah, in a creative way, but also in just a way to prepare your photo for the finishing touches, which for me, you come to the effects, and then you get texture. If you want to soften this up, you could slide that over, or if you want to sharpen it, you can. I'm gonna leave the texture here where I want. I may end up I like the overall texture of the photo. I may soften up the face here. I know some people, especially ladies, they don't want all the detail on their face. They don't want to see all the wrinkles, all the pores and all that. The camera's getting too good nowadays, so I'll leave that, and I'll show you how we do the touch-ups. There's actually a brush where you can go and paint on all these effects in a specific area. So what I like to do is get the general feel for the whole photo and then do all my little touch-ups after that. So we have texture's okay. Clarity. This is something that you can see. It's kind of like a combination of a couple things. You can see some dehazing happening. You see some contrast happening a little bit. You can see some texturizing happening, which I maybe said that. I tend to leave that alone. I really like my camera and my lens, so I feel like if you're working with an iPhone, working with other cameras that aren't as sharp, that's a really useful tool to make them seem like you took that on a better camera. But I like the lifelike, sharp yet soft feel that my camera and my lens produces, so I usually leave the clarity alone. It's perfectly clear. You can use it though to sharpen up some photos that are slightly out of focus and other stuff like that, so I might use it here and there, but for the most part, if my shots are in focus, I'm gonna just leave them alone. Dehaze. I like this one. It's especially useful for someone like me, someone like you maybe, who's starting out in photography and you're not lighting your photos perfectly. As you can see, if you do it a bunch, it kind of takes out some of the haze, some of the extra light from some of the places, like kind of dims the shadow or the highlights a little bit. And I usually turn that on a tiny bit, just because I appreciate deep, dark colors and medium high to high highlights and stuff. I like contrast for sure. So, and then up next we got Vignette. What this does, if you slide extremely, you'll see it'll add a nice black circle around the subject, which can be kind of cool. I might actually use that effect for this photo. If you go the other way, it'll do a white one. So if you had, a different effect of a photo, you want to do this all the way and then export this and add some like writing on the sides or something, that's always an option. It's important kind of have your subject in the middle, so if you want, you could crop and then do this and make sure they're in the middle. I'm gonna double click, bring it back to the middle, make sure we know what we're doing, make sure we're in the right spot. Shout out to my brother Alex, just hit me up on the iWatch. Love you, bro. So yeah, I'm gonna vignette this a tiny bit, especially because I feel like this painting in the background is kind of a little bright, and I want on the tops, I feel like it's kind of taken away from the focus in the middle of the face. So if you want to hey, look in the middle, then you can kind of darken the around, and you see right then it's like, okay, this photo is about this person and not about the painting in the background. So I like to throw some of that on, highlight the face, then you can throw grain on if that's something you're into. I like these for more hip-hop shows, like recap photos, like underground type feel. You can add some grit to things, a whole bunch of grit that's unwanted usually just photos of people's faces, unless you're doing, like I said, some more like street vibe, street style type of joint. So here we have the brush, like I was saying, and I'm gonna wrap this up real quick because I got one little trick that I want to show you, and then I gotta wrap it up. I got a newborn baby upstairs. My wonderful woman Mackenzie, who we're looking at, was been taking care of him, Ezekiel. So gotta make sure I help out with that. Yeah, take care of your kids, yo. Come on, take care of your kids. Make sure you're taking care of your kids. So this brush, I'm not really gonna go too far into it, but what you can do is you can change the size of the brush. Come over to this fader right here, which is really, really dope. They really dial it in. Like, Adobe is so amazing at really giving you the options that you want, making everything intuitive. So essentially everything I walked you through, all the things you would do to the whole photo, now you can come and apply to just one area that you think needs something. So if I want to go down to texture, and let's say I want to soften by -32, let's bring that up a little bit, and I can come over here and start softening this face here. Or whatever. And like I said, I'm not really gonna go too far, but you can get super creative with this and do whatever you want. It's really up to you. Gradient, all this other stuff. And then down here you have copy and edit things. I really like this. This is super cool for fast editing. Say I like everything. I like how this photo is looking, which I do like it. It's not done. I usually go through some filters and other stuff and see what I could throw on top to give it just a more creative look sometimes. But say this is a good starting point, I'll go ahead and copy these editing settings. I can come over here to some other photos I started to edit. I'll find one that's original, and then the dope thing is I can paste my edit settings, and so now we have, 2 photos at least that are matching in vibe and in settings and everything. So it really helps for speed. Like if you decide, okay, I love the way this photo looks, the vibe, you don't have to go and remember every single step you did. You can just come over to these dots on the right side right here, click copy on the one you like, paste it on the one that you're working on, and we're good to go, y'all. Real quick, thank you once again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you. I got a bunch more videos coming. The first video was a tour of my studio, and I'm gonna go in depth about that. I'm gonna review all the hardware I have and then all that stuff. I'm gonna go into a second right now, a new trick, a new workflow I have in Adobe Illustrator to make creative digital art. That's a step beyond, you making photos or doing this. You want to make something creative, you want to do it kind of quick. This gives you a good way to work. It also bring in other elements that will fit the same theme if you apply the similar workflow to it. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is something I'm working on right here. And let me throw on another beat for y'all real quick. I make beats, by the way. I made all these beats. If you're a rapper or whatever, you make hip hop, and you need to do some hip hop, holla at your boy. You need some beats, holla at your boy. So here we are. This is digital art that I made from just throwing a photo in here. You can click on the photo and then hit an option that comes up as image trace, and it gives you options, and then you can trace your image and add all these, you can define it. You want it to be a black and white logo, so it's really cool if you're drawing logos by hand and you have it really well defined, the contrast good. It can pick up the difference between where you are drawing and where you aren't drawing. Put it in there, it'll trace it. And then what I really love is you can separate the elements. So you hit separate, and then I can literally drag shade by shade each bit and piece that I want to move out of there. And I kind of like that. It adds a nice shadow to the background, so I'm gonna keep that going. And then you can also duplicate certain areas. So that's how I have this, like these little things right here that are adding to a nice little 3-dimensional effect, like coming out of the photo from the background in past the foreground. You can take any shade Command C, or just copy if you, I don't know what that is on Windows, Command V, and you now have this thing that looks like a state. It's the same thing, so you can move elements around. It gives you a lot of possibilities. So what I've been thinking about lately is, instead of using Photoshop, I can just take photos, combine them, literally add a building in here, right here, image trace it. It'll have a similar theme as this and be workable. I can move it around, trace it around. I can also move my floating self, duplicate it, turn it upside down. So you get a really cool way to work as if you're in Photoshop almost, but you get these building blocks of, you know, dope visuals, dope whatever it is that allows you to just do whatever you want. So yeah, that's about it. If you want the full walkthrough on how I image trace and make digital art from photography and from found elements online, tune in to the next video. How you can tune in. I will see y'all later. Enjoy the rest of your night, day, evening, moment. Much love. Stay creating, y'all. We got this. We are doing it. I love y'all. Let's continue to get it. 2021 does not know what we're ready for. I know what you're ready for, though. So, peace.